Baela Targaryen is one of a small handful of the royal family to survive the Dance of the Dragons. She has the heart of a warrior. She is a dragon rider, and her descendancy is of the purest Valyrian blood. She is, for all intents and purposes, a shining example of what a Targaryen should be. And yet, for some reason, fans of House of the Dragon have become fixated upon the betrothal of Baela and her stepbrother, Jacaerys Velaryon, and have made it the pinnacle of her characterization in this story. The rumored tryst between Prince Jacaerys and Sarah Snow during his visit to the north have stands of Jace and Baela up in arms and quoting the racist words of maesters in the defense of Baela's honor. But in truth, this affair only makes Baela's storyline even more interesting, and readers of Fire and Blood understand that Baela is so much more than just Jace's betrothed. At the start of the Dance of the Dragons, Baela has lived on Driftmark with her grandmother for some years, while her twin Rhaena remained on Dragonstone with their father, Rhaenyra, and her children, which includes her future husband Jacaerys. The Last Supper, in Episode 8, may have been the first time Baela had spent much time with her immediate family in a long while, considering the strain between the families after Laenor's death. Baela does not rely upon Jacaerys to defend her when Aegon makes inappropriate remarks her way. She is fierce enough to defend herself, to the point where her sister must hold her back once the fighting breaks out. Jacaerys and Baela were betrothed when the prince was 4 years old and the princess was just 2, according to Fire and Blood. Her twin Rhaena was also betrothed to Prince Lucerys, who was only 3 years old at the time. This was arranged between Rhaenyra, Laena, and Daemon, who had an extremely close relationship which was not portrayed in the show. House of the Dragon portrays Rhaenyra seeking a marriage alliance with Princess Rhaenys on behalf of her sons to Rhaenys' granddaughters. This insinuates that Rhaenyra only sought this arrangement to defend her sons from the truth of their parentage coming forth when Vaemond Velaryon came to King's Landing to entreat the Queen and the Hand for his own claim to the seat of Driftmark. This change portrays Rhaenyra as grasping for this alliance, while she was already married to Baela and Rhaena's father, Daemon, which actually proves the request was extending a courtesy. In Westeros, marriage alliances are created by men in the best interest of their house, such as Otto Hightower or Corlys Velaryon working to create marriage pacts for their daughters with the king, despite a very large age difference. But here we find Rhaenyra honors Rhaenys by making this request to her personally, rather than relying upon male supremacy. Rhaenys may have recognized this grace of authority, which could have swayed her decision. Looking back, her own grandmother, Good Queen Alysanne, was known for creating marriage arrangements for many of her children and grandchildren, so perhaps this was a duty that fell to women in Old Valyria, and this tradition may appeal to that supreme authority. Baela is very much her father's daughter, in the way that she is strong, fearless, and capable. She has studied ancient texts with her father while in Pentos and speaks High Valyrian, the language of their ancestors. During the War Council for Rhaenyra, it is stated that Baela's dragon, Moondancer, is not quite large enough to bear her weight, though they count the dragon amongst their stock. I like to imagine Baela putting Moondancer on a strict workout regimen from here because she is determined to join the fighting. In a deleted scene from House of the Dragon, we learn that when Rhaenys returns to Dragonstone with the news of Viserys' death, she tries to take Baela and Rhaena to Driftmark to keep them safe. But Baela wishes to stay and defend their family, naming herself a dragon rider.
I am a dragon rider, like my mother and father and you. If the Greens reach to usurp our queen's throne, then they must be answered with fire and blood.
One of the biggest problems with focusing on this one aspect of Baela is that it limits her character growth by defining her entire existence to her betrothal to the heir of the kingdom. When the showrunners cut her scenes down to focus on other characters, they also eliminate the more ferocious aspects of her personality. Interestingly, the dynamic that Baela and her twin Rhaena bring to the story mirrors that of Arya and Sansa Stark in A Game of Thrones. While Baela fits more into Arya's unruly and tomboy characteristics, Rhaena reflects the proper lady we see in Sansa, even losing her young hatchling the way Sansa lost her direwolf. These parts of their stories are explored more and more as the Dance of the Dragons progresses, and even beyond, which is why defining Baela by her relationship with Jace completely undermines one of the very few people with enough savvy and strength to survive the dance and through to the end of Fire and Blood. The details of the happenings at Winterfell are speculative at best, but two things definitively came from the conference between Lord Cregan Stark and Prince Jacaerys. The prince had, in fact, secured an alliance with Winterfell on behalf of his mother, the Queen, and the Pact of Ice and Fire, a sworn oath of brotherhood sealed in blood, which stated that Cregan's eldest son would marry Jace's future firstborn daughter. As the story goes, when the prince visited Winterfell, he was given a warm welcome by Lord Cregan Stark. Lord Cregan and Jacaerys took a liking to one another, as Jace reminded Cregan of his brother who had died 10 years prior. The men drank together, trained together, and swore an oath of brotherhood, sealed in blood. Now it is said that Lord Cregan had a bastard sister, a wolf girl called Sarah Snow, and that Prince Jacaerys became so smitten with her that he took her as his wife before a heart tree in the Winterfell Godswood while the old gods looked on. According to Grand Maester Gildane, this was simply one of Mushroom's tales, and it would be out of character for the prince to break his vows for some half-wild, unwashed northern bastard. If Sarah Snow had ever existed, and if the prince perchance to dally with her, it is no more than other princes have done in the past and will do on the morrow, but talk of marriage was preposterous. Whichever version of the story may be true, or not, there was most certainly an accord drawn up between Lord Cregan Stark and Prince Jacaerys Velaryon called the Pact of Ice and Fire. Lord Cregan's 1-year-old son Rickon would be married to the future firstborn daughter of Prince Jacaerys and, presumably, Princess Baela. This future princess would be sent to Winterfell at the age of 7 to be fostered there until such time she was old enough to be married. Prince Jacaerys left the north with the northern kingdoms and the Eyrie secured for his mother, the Queen. But upon his arrival back to Dragonstone, he received the mournful news of the death of his brother Lucerys. Jace came to the fore while his mother recuperated after the loss of her children. He sent his brother Joffrey to the Vale as promised to Lady Jane Eyre, along with Princess Rhaena and 3 dragon eggs for safekeeping. Princess Baela remained on Dragonstone with her betrothed, refusing to leave his side, and claimed she would fight beside him on her own dragon. She insisted they be married at once, but Jacaerys refused, saying he wished to wait until the war was over. But Mushroom claims this was because he had already married Sarah Snow, the bastard girl from Winterfell. This rumored relationship between Sarah and Jace has Baela Jace stans in an uproar. However, this rumored affair does a lot more for Baela's story than fans are giving her credit for. There is as much to be said for Jace feeling a bond towards Sarah for her freedom as a bastard as there is to Jace bonding with Baela over the death of a parent. Baela knows the secret of Jace's parentage. However, the unspoken exceptions made for Rhaenyra's indiscretions ultimately cost Baela and Rhaena their own positions as heirs to Driftmark. Baela may recognize this, and it may be part of the reason she prefers to reside at Driftmark with her grandmother over Dragonstone with her father and step-siblings. It's worth pointing out that Princess Rhaenys had desired to name Baela heir to Driftmark, and Rhaenyra was terrified she would press that claim without her lord husband's presence at the council in King's Landing. This was also why Rhaenyra pushed for the marriage alliance in House of the Dragon, which would consolidate the claim by marriage and avoid all the messy details. Of course, this was all to appease Rhaenyra and her children, who were fathered by Harwin Strong, which is ultimately the problem to begin with. but it becomes complicated when you are heir to the Iron Throne as well as secretly illegitimate. It's no secret that Fire and Blood is written from several perspectives, but more often than not, the maesters and septons downplay the power of the dragon lords, especially the women. Quite often, at the convenience of the interpreter, certain perspectives are immediately discounted. It is a fact that the maesters, septons, and the high towers are all interwoven with one another, while Mushroom is more often in the presence of the Targaryens. So we can interpret the truth accordingly. Baela fits the ideal archetype of a dragon queen. She is fierce, fearless, intelligent, and educated on the heritage of her people as well as the people of Westeros. However, the maesters have also remarked that she has the carnal curiosities and appetites known of the dragon lords. Readers must consider that Baela is her father's daughter, and the feelings of the maesters toward Daemon Targaryen are well known. While Jacaerys absorbs a lot of the blame in this, it may be that Baela was not even interested in being close to him. While the story states that Baela insisted they be married as soon as possible, and Jace refused, there are small omissions that prove there may be holes in this romance. If she were as provocative as the maesters describe her as, it would seem more likely that she would have lived on Dragonstone near the prince she was betrothed to, if that were truly her nature. Jace carries a lot of weight on his shoulders surrounding his illegitimacy, and unfortunately, he has learned from his mother that the cost of this secret is a high price, which she is willing to exact from anyone, including their own family. For example, Aemond lost an eye, and Vaemond lost his head.
He can keep his tongue.
So when he arrives in Winterfell, so far from the rules and politics of the South and King's Landing, and meets a beautiful wolf girl who happens to be the bastard sister of the Lord of Winterfell, living freely and honorably amongst the people of the North, it is a completely new experience for Jacaerys. Consider Jon's life at Winterfell. He got along with his siblings, received the same education, learned skills at arms, and lived as a lordling for his whole life. Yes, his southern stepmother did not particularly like him, but she was never cruel to him. Only Sansa stuck her nose up at him, but she learned in the end that Jon was as much her brother as Robb, Bran, or Rickon. When Jon went north of the Wall and experienced the freedom of the wildlings, he had a similar experience to what Jace would have felt in Winterfell. The stigma of bastardy seems to be a systemic problem rooted more often in southern houses, especially considering the Lord's right to the first night, which was practiced much more regularly in the north and was only abolished during the reign of Jaehaerys and Alysanne. There are very likely many, many illegitimate children around the north who lived amongst their lordly siblings with no issue. The legend of Sarah Snow works because it tracks with the story. Anyone who has watched or read Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire will know that all the pieces are there. A love affair between a Stark and a Targaryen, a pact of ice and fire, dragon eggs in the crypts, you get it. There is no excuse for Jacaerys being unfaithful to the woman he is betrothed to. However, these kids are under unique circumstances, being engaged to their cousin, stepbrother, since they were babies. The question remains of how much emotion is interwoven into these political marriages within their own family, which is done to protect and consolidate their bloodlines for their connection to their dragons. Baela is so much more than just a victim of this love affair. I'll try not to give too many spoilers away, but to be clear, Baela's story is just beginning. Baela is a warrior who is motivated to protect her family and their dragons in much the same way that her father does. Only the size of Moondancer holds her back, but not for long. Baela is destined for greatness in the annals of history. Much like Arya Stark, she becomes known for her adventures and getting herself into trouble, but is intelligent enough to weasel her way out again. Later in the story, she is taken prisoner, escapes, imprisoned again, nearly beheaded, defends her family, fights on Dragonback, and defeats the most beautiful dragon ever known. Baela's future includes creating marriage alliances for herself and her family, becoming the sweetheart of King's Landing, and rebuilding much that was broken during the dance. But most importantly, she is also one of the very few people who emerge from the Dance of the Dragons with the ancient ancestral wisdom of the Valyrians and their dragons. Undoubtedly, her father passed down this precious information. Daemon and Laena would have been the last dragon riders to visit the smoking ruins of Valyria in search of sacred knowledge. Baela Targaryen is an entirely fascinating character who is one of the last great Targaryen dragon lords. There is a huge lack of respect for her as a woman to limit her characterization to her relationship with Jace, and this ultimately may lie at fault with the show creators for removing scenes of Baela where she shows her fierce autonomy and ability to defend herself. She is not simply a tool to prop up Jacaerys and make him look more capable. At this point, we don't even know if Sarah Snow was a real person. However, we do know that House of the Dragon show creators have worked to minimize Baela's characterization not only in favor of building up Jace, but also to prop up the storyline for the Greens. For example, Helaena has a much smaller role in the books. However, the show took extra moments to build up her hallmark as a dreamer. But unfortunately, they did not offer the same to Baela or Rhaena's characters. In fact, they removed scenes that would have provided that characterization for Baela specifically. The breadcrumbs provided for Helaena were enough to build empires with, but Baela and Rhaena were reduced in this sense. Their book counterparts have far more distinct qualities that showrunners could have worked from, but chose not to. Similarly, House of the Dragon removed a lot of the storyline for Baela's mother, Laena Velaryon, who featured prominently in Fire and Blood. Much of the story shared between Rhaenyra and Laena in the book was given to Rhaenyra and Alicent to strengthen their bond over the relationship with Laena, while also taking any opportunity to make Daemon look as awful as possible. What is disappointing about these changes is that it takes away from some of the deeper dragon mythology, which could have added a beautiful touch of imagery for the three heads of the dragon. Rhaenyra was also present for Laena's final labor, which claimed her life. But by removing this close relationship, it favors the view of Rhaenyra callously stealing Laena's husband at her own funeral, which was a change from how it was written in Fire and Blood. Baela and Rhaena's storylines were diminished in order to prop up Helaena and flesh out her character, while Laena's story was greatly reduced and her close relationship with Rhaenyra foregone to propel Alicent Hightower's story. While there is still time to build up Baela and Rhaena, the unfortunate byproduct of Laena's sacrifice storyline was that it only made Rhaenyra look like a much worse person than she actually is. Let me know your thoughts and questions in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for all the latest content on House of the Dragon and much more. And if you enjoy my work, please consider joining my Patreon or channel memberships to help support the channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye!
To you and your family's good health, dear uncles.
To you as well.